It's your responsibility to uphold the boundaries and the integrity of the tasks that you're doing.
Of asking yourself, like, hey, is what I'm doing something I could do for years, or is this something that I can only keep up for weeks or months? Welcome to the Growth Drivers Podcast, the show where we break down the leadership frameworks, mindset shifts, and strategies that fuel entrepreneurial success, personal transformation, and business breakthroughs.
I'm Rachael Novak.
And I'm Mike Novak.
Let's dive in and start driving your growth.
All right, today we're talking about burnout, how burnout is a choice and how to operate at peak performance without crashing. This is a good topic because I think that we've all experienced burnout at some stage in life, some stage in business. And I think a lot of times when you're in that phase of burnout, you lack the perspective to see how did I get here and how did I get out?
And I think that it's almost a little controversial to say that burnout is a choice, but it is.
Yeah, it's an opt-in for sure.
For sure it is. Yeah. I'm excited to dive into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah. So we've got some things to share with you guys today. Like we've both obviously like hit burnout in different parts of our life, many, many different times. And, you know, as I was thinking about this topic, it gave me a lot of time to kind of just reflect back on like what put me into a stage of burnout. And every single time it's self-inflicted, to be perfectly clear. That's why I said it's a choice. You know what I mean? Like we are opting into that, whether we do it consciously or unconscious. And so I want to kind of talk about like, how do we get into a phase where we're actually burned out? Like what got us here? Because if you know what gets you there, you can avoid doing that shit and then just never get to burnout. Because no one's raising their hand saying, hey, I want to get more burned out.
I'd like to experience some
like,
burnout.
Yeah.
Burnout for here.
It's something that just kind of like, it's kind of like a volcano erupting where you're like, oh my God, I'm burnt out. I'm fried. I don't want to talk to anyone. And now I've got just problems everywhere. And that whole idea here is how do we avoid that?
Yeah,
you know
exactly. Well, and like you said, you know, burnout like kind of being similar to a volcano where there's not much to see. Like it looks the same. It looks the same. It's going along. It's handling. You're managing. It's you're handling the things you need to handle. But then all of a sudden one day you're like, I have hit my limit and I am burnt out. Right? That's exactly what people get. So, I mean, I think first things first in regards to what gets you to a point of burnout, a lack of prioritization in your day to day, a lack of proactivity in the tasks that you're trying to accomplish or the things that you're in your areas of responsibility, right? So I know that for a fact, even at the end of a day or the end of a week, if I have spent more of my time being reactive to things coming up, to managing, to putting out fires, to handling things reactively all week, by the end of the week, I'm exhausted, right? Which is one of the first signs, of course, of burnout. So if we know that that happens after a day or a week, by continually not having utilizing prioritization, having really consistent priorities that you're managing, that's an easy slide right into burnout.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the reactive part is where you end up really quickly losing control of time. And when you lose control of time, you lose control of productivity, you end up working a lot more to make up that gap. And then burnout becomes kind of the inevitable outcome if you kind of just reverse engineer that. So let's break down those two things, prioritization and boundaries, because they're two very, very different things. They obviously work hand in hand. They're part and parcel in this conversation. But how do we identify priorities and what we want to commit to? And like for a lot of us that are busy, you know, we're getting 15, 20 different things we could do every day, right? Like every single day I come to the office, I'm like, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. So how do I choose what is actually important? Right? How do I establish these priorities? I think a lot of people struggle with that because they look at everything just from one kind of equal parallel. Like these are all just things that need to happen. Right. And so if I can change that perspective from these are things that need to happen to like what actually needs to get done to bring alignment with my vision and my goals, that's where things start to get interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think number one, it's when people don't take the time to do their weekly planning. Like obviously with the Warrior Way system, we utilize our weekly wars. We utilize our monthly missions. So we have the framework and the structure to sit down, to look at the week coming up, look at the dates, look at the like what important things are coming up, what priorities do I need to put in place? What 4 things per each domain do I need to focus on this week? And then when I go to attack each day, I already have kind of a built-in to-do list to accomplish those things. And as things come up, it's my job to utilize the filter of my focus with that weekly war, with those priorities throughout that week. And I have to use that as a filter and say, is this coming at me right now? Does this fit within the scope of this priority? Does this fit within the scope of urgent and important in this particular domain that I need to focus on? Or is this something that I can schedule for next week? Is this something that I can, put off for a different time? And I don't need to handle it right at this second, even though that may feel really easy. Getting the discipline each day to utilize that urgent, important quadrant filter where, okay, this is urgent, important, and it has to happen right now. That's important to the mission. That's important to what I'm focusing on. Or is this important, but it's not urgent, right? It's something that I can absolutely have done within the next month. So I don't need it to be on my plate today, but I am going to put it on my schedule for next week on that particular day so that I know that it's going to get done. And that way it's not swimming around in my brain. So I think number 1 is the weekly planning and the mission-oriented structure that you utilize to make sure that you have a mission going into your week.
Yeah, for sure. Like prioritization is about you have to have complete clarity on where you want to go, first of all, right? Like until you have that, you don't have any idea what your priorities are because you haven't identified the target, right? So let's identify what the target is on a relative amount of time, which could be a year. And then let's reverse engineer what needs to happen this month and then this week, like you said. And then from there, we can allocate how to build out our calendar. What you said, the reactive versus proactive, I think is very accurate. And one of the tools that you and I both do is we build these weekly wars on the weekend so that come Monday, we already know what's going to happen for our week, right? Like we're not waiting to peel in here at Monday morning at 9 a.m. to determine how our week's going to look. We're taking, kind of a look back on what happened this last week, and then we're setting targets for the next week before the week even starts. The biggest mistake I think people can make, and what puts them in a reactive state, is that lack of planning time on the weekend. So they're really setting up their week for success. So the weekly planning absolutely helps with that. What about the boundaries part?
Yeah, I mean, so boundaries is going to be really similar to, making sure that if you are mission focused each week, like you have your plan, you've put together kind of each daily mission in regards to what do you need to accomplish by the end of this week to accomplish what you need to for this month, for this quarter, for this year, then it's your responsibility to uphold the boundaries and the integrity of the tasks that you're doing, right? Because like you said, business owners, real estate agents, anybody who works for themselves or is in any sort of managerial or leadership position constantly has things being thrown at them. And if every time something's thrown at you, you adopt it and you inherit it as now your problem, and all of a sudden other people's emergencies become your urgency, you've got a big problem. So you have to have the discipline to put up those boundaries and say, that is not my monkey. This is not my circus. This is my mission over here. Here's a time next week that I'm happy to help address this or whatever. But I think it's up to you to maintain kind of those boundaries around your time and around the tasks that you're responsible for.
Yeah, and how do you do that without being an asshole? Yeah, especially within like a team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, number 1, it's setting expectations, right? So like for us in the beginning of the week, we're able to kind of connect with each of our teammates on the operations side and on the sales side and kind of say like, this is the focus, this is where we're going, this is kind of the theme for this week. But there's going to be times that as an owner, as a leader, as an operator, that people think we're mean. Like that's just the reality of it, right? I talked before, I did a podcast a long time ago about how you have to be okay not being liked. And there's a way, of course, to say, hey, I completely recognize that that's a really important thing. Let's gauge the urgency of this together. If it's not something that needs to be handled right now, and it's not something that I can inherit and help you with, then we're going to put this off. I understand it's important. Let's put this off and schedule a different time to talk about it. So I think making sure that you're tactful, of course, in your response or your approach to setting and maintaining those boundaries is important. But the right people around you will also understand your responses and reactions to those things too.
A lot of leaders, I'm sure you've heard this before, they brag about how they have an open door policy. Like, hey, at any time, come in here. I'm here to talk to you. And it's like such a mistake that I see them make, right? Because they never actually get anything done.
Yeah.
They end up caught up in like the most like low hanging fruit of the whole business. Like, it's just like, it's like nothing shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's noise most of the time. In fact, a lot of time it's drama, right?
Right.
It's tasks and things like that where people want your approval on something that they really know what to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's two different concepts when it comes to like the open door policy, because, you know, we are believers in, you know, people in our organization, we want them to come to us with things. Like, that's important to have that open dialogue and open communication. But it's the medium with which we accept that open door policy that makes a difference, right? So say there is an issue with something, and it would be easy for that person to walk right into our office and interrupt whatever it is that we're in the middle of working on and finishing up and completing, to sit down for 10 minutes and talk about this. Like, that would be very easy for them, very distracting for us, right? Takes us completely out of our lane, completely out of what we're trying to accomplish. So instead, create a culture where people have Marco Polo, have send a text message and say, hey, like, the expectation is if you want to chat with me, no problem, send me a Marco Polo and I'm going to respond when I have time to whatever issue it has. 9 times out of 10, when you're able to move that medium to something that is on your timeline to respond to, they've already solved the issue. It's no longer an issue.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's getting people to take ownership for their positions within your team where they don't feel like they need your approval for everything.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And a lot of it,
you're telling them to make a decision.
Exactly. Like you said, it's empowering your people to make that right decision, and then backing them up when they make it, right? Like, not reprimanding them if they made the wrong decision, but hey, this is how I would have done that. No problem this time. Next time, let's try it this way, but great job taking the reins.
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you haven't heard of the 4 quadrants, I would definitely go Google search that. Mm-hmm. At some point, we should do like a podcast on that, because it's worthy on its own. Yeah. But the other like thing that kind of came to mind is the last quadrant, the not urgent, not important. Like, I call that the noise and the bullshit. Like, those are the things that I think a lot of people feel obligated to spend time on that they just don't need to, like responding to emails that require no response, things like that.
Correct. Yeah. It is one of those things, a lot of things that fall within that quadrant, the not important, not urgent, like responding to an email that doesn't need a response, for instance, is an example of busy work and not productive work.
Right.
Right. It's like, oh, it feels good to respond to an email and close a loop, but was that actually necessary? Does that move the ball down the field? Does that actually accomplish something toward the mission? No.
Right. Well, that's a really important thing that you just said, is that difference between busyness and productivity, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes when you see burnout happening, it's because there is this nonstop sense of busyness and people are just running around and they're not actually doing it with focus, right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
The other couple things I think we should talk about on to why people end up in this state is, saying yes to just too many things, and like just spreading themselves thin, like really filtering that. Like I said, I think a lot of people feel an obligation to say yes to things, but you have to be in integrity with yourself to say no, right? If it doesn't align with where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do, then why the hell are you spending time on it?
100%. Right? So like one of my favorite things to kind of use as an example in the real estate industry, especially, is connecting with colleagues. Right, like going to coffee or going to happy hour or accepting a lunch from a lender or a title rep. Like we've been able to build and maintain excellent relationships with people in this industry in all different ancillary industries around real estate. And it's not because we go to lunch with them, and it's not because we go spend 2 hours at happy hour. I've done that a couple of times, but far and away we don't ever do that. We don't ever accept lunches. We don't ever accept coffee dates, right? It's the very, maybe one a year on average. Throughout our entire 8-year career.
I think of one of my builder clients who's asked me multiple times, like, hey, can we go get lunch together? I'm like, no. Yeah. No, we can't. I'm going to sit here in my office eating my chicken and rice while you're telling me what you need to tell me. Yeah. And then we'll close this meeting out in 15 minutes instead of taking 2 hours.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the examples of I think people say yes because they're trying to be relatable or they're trying to build good relationships, when it's okay, this 2-hour lunch, and now it's cost everybody $75 of drinks and service and waiting and this and that and small talk in between, when we could have just sat in our office together and eaten out of containers and gotten whatever we needed done in 17 minutes, right? So trying to kind of be a lot of things, say yes to a lot of things, does it align with where you're actually trying to go, or does it feel good on your ego, right?
Another one is the concept of rest and recovery. This is one that I really struggled with for years. Like really shifting perspective and looking at these as an important tool in the toolbox of achieving really big things, right? Like a lot of us that are type A and really aggressive will push so hard and so long until the wheels just come off the wagon, and then it's a shit show and it takes a lot longer to put it all back together than if you would have just taken a little pause. And so that's why I like our Sundays, for instance, we kind of make those non-negotiable times to really do nothing, right? Like we do our weekly planning and we lounge around, like we watch Netflix, we relax, we give our brain a break, and that like little micro reset each week is really, really important, I think, to charging into Monday with focus, because you've done your plan like we talked about, but you're refreshed, you're not like fried.
100%. I think, for so many people in high achieving industries and for high achievers in general, it's like a badge of honor to be a hustler, right? To grind. It's a huge gold star on your chest to be able to say, I'm a badass and I hustle and I sleep 4 hours a night and I work 16 hours a day and do this. Like, it's a badge of honor for whatever reason. And that also is the fastest way to really not like your life, to absolutely hit burnout and never want to talk to people ever again, right? One of the signs for us as we're getting closer and closer to like our breaks that we take, right? The end of the week or the end of the quarter, whatever it is, we're like, when I start feeling like I don't want to be around people, when I start feeling like I don't want to talk to people, that's when I know that burnout is getting really close.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one was kind of just the mindset perspective of asking yourself, like, hey, is what I'm doing something I could do for years, or is this something that I can only keep up for weeks or months? Because people can push really, really hard for a short period of time, but really, what's the point of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the better thing to do is to figure out like what's a sustainable pace and shift that mindset to a mindset of a marathon, right? Like, how am I going to run this race for years?
Yeah.
And this race is this constant ascension and expansion of life, right? How do I do this for the rest of my life?
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I would counter a little bit and say that there are within that marathon, there are seasons where you have to sprint, right?
Yeah, there are definitely seasons where you're going to push harder.
Yep. And so like being able to recognize in real time and having the awareness to say, am I in a position financially where I can take it easy and really invest time into my family and my marriage? Or will that create more stress if I'm not focusing on the financial stability portion of my life, right? Like we were there 8.5 years ago, where it's like, no, like, yes, we want a solid marriage. Yes, we want relationships with our kids. But right now we are in a season where we need to bust our asses and we need to sprint through this season. But we made sure during that season, we weren't taking lunches. We were very fiscally responsible. We definitely had a plan for where the money was going to go. We were investing very strategically. So we didn't waste any of that sprint. We knew it was a season. We knew we had to push really hard. And once we got through that, it was like, okay, now we have savings. We have capital built up in the business. We have some stability in our home. Now we can start building in some more of that harmony and that integration with all 4 domains. But there are seasons that you have to go through those things. Right?
Yeah, I look at those as kind of like breakthrough growth seasons, right?
Totally.
Like, what are these growth spurts? And they don't happen every year for people, like, but they do happen for sure. Like, I can think of 2 or 3 in my life that have happened where I had to push like insanely hard for like a year, which is like a long period of time to go 100%.
Yes.
But eventually it does normalize if you consciously change it. Like the risk that I'm talking about is that person that doesn't realize that they're actually running at an unsustainable pace and that they're going to completely fry. Like, I've seen so many people in real estate that were top producers and they don't even sell houses anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're just like, I don't want to see another client again. You know what I mean? Like, I've been there, done that. I'm never doing it again. Right? Like, and that's the dangerous person. Like, you got to really watch out for that spot.
For sure.
You know what I mean? No one wants to be that guy.
For sure. Well, and like to that point, if you're doing this for a year or two and you're somehow, maybe it's that you're scaling up your lifestyle, or maybe it's that you aren't being fiscally responsible with like the money that you're generating, or maybe you are spending time on not all the right things that are actually generating the revenue that you need to break through this season, right? Like, there's a couple of different things that you could probably dissect within that sprint season that would lead you to say like, okay, I've busted my ass, and now through this season, I don't really have much to show for it other than this little thing over here. Like, yeah, I'm done. So that, yeah, I totally get that. It's it's going into that season with kind of that strategy, with that mindset of, okay, I am doing this intentionally, and this is what I expect to get out of it, right? This is the goal of this season. So when you get to the other side, you have fruit.
Yeah, you define the end state.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then getting your family on board with that.
100%. That's a whole different podcast from today.
All right. So we just kind of covered a whole bunch of reasons how people end up into burnout. But let's talk about ways to proactively just position yourself so this never happens to you.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you could just do the reverse of what we just said, right. But we have some tips for people. I think the first one is really figuring out and getting clear on what makes you happy. Like, you need to figure out what makes you happy and makes you money. Like, too often I see people that, like, they look at it from the perspective, I'm only going to do stuff that makes me money even if I hate it. That's a dangerous place to be. And then you see the other people are like, I just want to be happy, and I've been told that if I'm happy that the money will come. Well, that's a line of bullshit.
Yeah,
right?
That's fantasy world.
These worlds must cross over, and you have to realize that you're not going to love everything about your job, and there's things that I don't love about my job sometimes, but 95% of it I really do like. You know what I mean? And so how do you get to that place where you can really build a life and a week and a month that brings you joy, but also makes you the money you're after? How do you have both?
That's like, I think that's the eternal question, babe. Like, it's like people are constantly striving for a feeling of their day to day, right? And I think that is the disconnect. People are looking for something that makes them feel good day to day, as opposed to understanding, no, like what I'm doing day to day, I enjoy for the most part. I tolerate the other part, but I love the outcome. I love the impact that it has, right? And when you're constantly, when you're basing things off of a feeling, when you're basing things off of how you feel every single day, you're going to set yourself up for some massive failure. Because newsflash, there are some days that I don't want to get out of bed because I'm exhausted, or I know I've got a ton of shit to do and I have a 16-hour day literally ahead of me. Those are rough days. But by the end of that day, I feel very accomplished. I know what I've done. I know that it's moved the ball down the field. I know that I've contributed and participated financially and productively with my family and my business. So that's very satisfying. So there's a difference between knowing going into it that I'm making a difference. It's also the majority, 90%, 95%, I enjoy this. And then the other part is I'm not getting caught up in the feeling of unhappiness or dissatisfaction day to day.
Yeah, and like the example that comes to mind for me is YouTube for real estate agents, right? Like so many agents have become obsessed with YouTube, and they will avoid doing like all the things that actually produce income in their business to go like edit a video.
Like
somebody could pay somebody like $100 off of Fiverr to do.
Yeah.
Or to like research the perfect video or go shoot the perfect video. You know what I mean? They'll spend like, this is like a huge achievement for their week to get this done, when in reality, if you go look back over last year, how many houses do you sell off YouTube? If you sold like 50, awesome, keep doing that.
Keep going,
but that's the only person I've ever talked to in my life that's actually done that, right? Most people are like, I sold none, or I sold like 2, right? So but it brings them so much joy. You know, right. They want to do it, but they're actually just kind of avoiding the hard work that's going to give them the outcome they want instead.
Well, and I think back to like the weekly planning, that's why dissecting the previous week, like what did I accomplish? What, where did I spend my time? Where did I waste my time is so important, and looking forward to the next week. Because if we are getting some traction on YouTube, say for the real estate agent, if that person's getting some traction on YouTube, or they're sharing it and they're getting some feedback, or they're getting some good leads or whatever, great. Like, go ahead and allocate to that. But is there 30 other hours in the week that you could buy back by hiring an editor part-time to actually go prospect or door knock or open house or whatever else? Like, are there other things that you should be doing? It's that auditing of time consistently, because we all have those weeks or days where we're like, shit, like I did not get done what I needed to get done because I had to field so many things or put out so many fires. But what could I have done to like navigate that better? What could I have avoided? What did I say yes to that maybe shouldn't have had? That kind of thing.
I think one of the ways that you can definitely you can achieve that outcome of spending time on what you want to do, and that it also makes you money, is to build leverage around you. Like, start adding in real estate, you add administrative help around you to do paperwork, things that don't actually make you money, that are just busy work, and that most agents hate doing, and that keep you kind of in your sales lane. You know what I mean? So leverage is definitely one way to do that. Mm-hmm. And if you can't afford full-time staff, like you said, you can go on Upwork, you can go on Fiverr, and you can hire people part-time to do small things within your business.
Exactly.
You don't need a huge budget for that.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, so I mean, let's talk about the next way, like, and this kind of goes along with planning. When you are working toward being the most productive that you possibly can be, and prioritizing all the things you need to during that week, building your perfect week is the most important part of that, right? Yeah. And you and I have gone back and forth so many iterations. I mean, monthly, I'm looking at my calendar, and is this still the most effective and efficient calendar and time block for me week to week, right? I had a great conversation with one of the agents on our team like a week or two ago, because they felt like it was Groundhog Day. Like they were waking up and doing the exact same thing every single day, all day long, and they weren't finding any like massive traction in any area. It was like just little trickles of traction. And so what we talked about, which you and I've talked about a lot, is every single day of the week doesn't necessarily need to look exactly the same. Like there are within your business or within whatever industry you're in, there are things that you need to do daily or multiple times a week in order to continue to move the needle and generate revenue and push the business forward. But just like we've talked about many times, having days of the week where you are more focused on one area of the business than another actually creates larger windows of opportunity for massive productivity.
Yeah, we all get caught up like when we have to shift what we're doing massively. Like let's say we're going from like making sales calls to writing emails, and then we're transitioning from writing email copy, like newsletter kind of stuff, to making a video, and then we're going back into now buyer consultations. Like that is so many shifts for your brain.
Yeah, you're like
right?
pivoting.
And you can't batch your energy doing that, right? So like your energy shift is very different for creative work versus sales work, right? Or at least it is for me, right? I'm in two totally different mindsets. Yeah. And so when you can batch those energies and that consistency each day to like, let's do a sales day on Monday. Let's do a sales day on Wednesday. Let's do a sales day on Friday. Like, let's do like 3 or 4 sales days a week, and then let's set another day aside to do all the other shit that you need to do.
That's exactly
I mean? Really
right.
batching that energy.
Yeah, well, especially for small business owners, right? Like small business owners or entrepreneurs or real estate agents, we do multiple things. Like we are sometimes administrative. We have to do administrative work. Then we have to write emails or create action plans or do marketing stuff. And then of course there's lead gen and having conversations and actually making sales, right? Converting leads. So it's like if you've got like for mine, for instance, my Mondays are a really heavy operations day. I sprinkle in some sales in the afternoon to make sure that I'm continuing revenue generating, but those are like big operations days. So I'm in the financials and I'm in the reporting and I'm in, like focusing on the back end of things, making sure the operations team is set up for success for the entire week. And then Tuesdays are training days for me. I'm running sales meetings. We're doing accountability meetings. We're running conversion trainings. We're doing a lot of role plays. So it's more me participating in and giving to the team, making sure that I'm investing in their development, right? And then teaching and collaborating with them. And then we get to the rest of the week. So we've got content and creative days, and we've got the newsletter and writing days, and then it's like project days where we're moving the ball down the field, creating new products, creating new projects, and actually fulfilling those things. And then we've of course got podcast afternoons.
Right. Yeah. The time where you're working in the business and working on the business and segmenting that is really important, I think. I would challenge everyone to try to figure out with complete clarity and focus, what are the 3 things you do in the business? You know what I mean? Like maybe you do sales and you do marketing and you do hiring, or maybe you do like administrative work and you do, agent attraction or something. But like, what are the 3 things that you actually do? When people have like 10 or 15 things, they're not going to do any of those things very, very well. And that means that you've just got a lack of structure. You got a lack of systems. You got a lack of people around you to keep you in your lane and doing the right things. Like I've talked to a lot of other team leaders where we'll have like an administrative staff person wearing like 10 different hats. You know what I mean? Like they're the marketing person, they're the TC, they're the listing coordinator, they're the personal assistant, they're the video person. They're like doing all of these different things. There's just a lot to do. You know what I mean? So like if you can get to 3 things, I think that's really key. Yeah,
I love that. I think that's totally key. I also think that, on that note of doing more things, adopting more things, that is the danger, so to speak, of real estate agents or people in the entrepreneurial space continually going to conferences and investing time in a lot of trainings or coaches or webinars or, it's like, in my opinion, attending a significant amount of training, webinars, conferences, it can be detrimental to your business because every time you go on those, you're adopting an idea or something is infusing, something needs to change because it worked for that person. And a lot of times it can take you out of the lane of productivity or continual growth in your business on your trajectory, what your 3 things are, because these new ideas are here and you're trying to implement something completely different, right? So I believe in conferences. I personally love going to conferences. I love going and collaborating with people and making new relationships, and the motivation and inspiration that I'm able to bring back, I love. But I would caution you to go into it with that mindset of, I'm going to take all these things with a grain of salt. I'm not necessarily going to take and implement all these things, but maybe one thing that can piggyback on something I'm already doing to help enhance it.
Or just don't even go if you've already got a full plate and you don't need more ideas. Like, that's the thing, is most people don't need more ideas. Yeah. They don't need more shit to do. They need more focus.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And unfortunately, a lot of that becomes noise and distraction.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Couple other things, just, we talked about this earlier, just kind of setting those breaks every 90 days, having that live the internal. We've done multiple podcasts about that, where you've got a vacation booked. I definitely think that does allow you to push a little bit harder in between. You're going to run your marathon, but you're going to run at a little faster clip than you would if you didn't have that finish line kind of coming up. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing, like how we take Sunday afternoons as kind of non-negotiable rest days, right? As what we do. And it's rest from our phones, and it's rest from appointments, and it's rest from trainings, and it's rest from, we'll handle immediate, urgent, important things, but that's about it. And so just like we have that to look forward to every week, we're able to push through the other 6.5 days pretty hard. And agents on our team, we really encourage people on our team, at least the agents, sales agents, to take one out of office day every week. In real estate, you're going to work mostly on the weekends, especially if you're trying to build your business. That's a huge time that a lot of people aren't working. That's your opportunity to be working with them and getting them out and seeing homes. So every single one of the agents on our team take an out of office day every week, on the same day every week, so that they have that day to look forward to. They can sleep in, they can spend it with a little family, they can recharge.
They know they're going to work Saturdays. Saturday is like a given in real estate.
Exactly.
Yeah, the one tip I would give people that I use for these breaks, these 90-day breaks, is the Countdown app. Like, if you go in the App Store and search for that, I will put my whole year's worth of trips. We book all of our trips 9 to 12 months out. And so each one of ours is in there with a countdown. If I ever need a burst of motivation, I'm really dragging ass, so I'll pull out the Countdown app. I'll be like, sweet, got 16 weeks till Vietnam. I can do 16 more weeks. That's a piece of cake. Mm-hmm. I've got that light that's super visual for me, just sitting there.
Well, and you literally will screenshot that to me and to the kids and be like, look, guys, look,
it's
coming.
coming.
Only 16 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, well, to me, it just helps me compartmentalize my focus and my energy, because I know that there's going to be a break eventually. As long as I know something is going to allow me to break eventually, and I'm not going to have to do this at this pace for forever, then I'm good. You know what I mean? That allows me, like you said earlier, just to push harder for that season.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's similar to a health and fitness goal, right? We have a season that we're in right now that we're pushing really hard, and we are not deviating whatsoever from the plan. And some days that's mentally very difficult. Physically, it's totally fine, but mentally it's very, very difficult. And so knowing that, okay, this is the date that I need to get to, having that date, I can count down to that. I can manage that. After that, I get a freaking cheeseburger and pizza and ice cream.
Right. Anything else that you want to share with people, on ways to proactively avoid burnout?
Yeah, I think, just going back to kind of the beginning of the conversation, understanding, the season of life that you're in, right? I talk a lot about that in the CEO world, and I talk a lot about that with the women that I coach and train with. But it's really, really important that you understand what season are you in, right? Have you built a really good business, and now is the season to be able to kind of maintain it and continue it and build habits in that, sustain that business, because maybe your kids are a certain age that you want to be spending more time with them, or maybe it's a season where you need to focus on your marriage and really pour into that domain, right? One of our teammates recently had said, these next 6 months, my focus is my marriage, and he's gone all in on that and really been able to make big strides. It's been a beautiful thing to watch, this relationship blossoming after so many years of being married. So what season are you in? And if it's in a season of, I'm in a good place with my marriage, and I'm in a pretty decent place with my kids and all these things, and you're wanting to build your business, you have to get into the mindset of being okay, being really uncomfortable, and feeling really out of balance for a little while, right? So it's really just understanding the season that you're in, and again, utilizing kind of a culmination or a collaboration of all of these things, right? Making sure you're planning ahead, making sure you're building your perfect week and having daily focus, making sure that you have something to look forward to, because in those seasons of push, in those seasons of grinding, in those seasons of big growth, having something to look forward to 10 weeks out, 12 weeks out will help you push so much harder and accomplish whatever that you're trying to do in that time.
Right. This really just comes down to awareness and intentionality, right?
100%.
It's those two things. Master those two things, and burnout will no longer be an issue for you.
That's exactly right. So hopefully these tips help you understand that burnout is a choice. And by continuing to not have awareness on any of these things or manage any of these things, you are choosing to end up in the burnout circle, which is tough.
Exactly. We'll see you next week.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Growth Drivers.
If you found value in this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a fellow entrepreneur.
For more insights, tools, and resources, visit us at thewarrioragent.com.
Keep pushing forward, keep leading with purpose, and we'll see you next time.